my belief from the beginning is that the 2 or 3 most important that must be done properly is the Attorney General with the White House counsel. And let's throw FBI in there. What I would call that.
Will he fire Wray?
101 day one. I think the FBI ought to be taken apart, shut down as a federal agency. The other is what I call the economic, because the firestorm that's going to come with the debt ceiling and the budget and all that. You have to have Treasury, you have to have NEC, and all the Treasury kind of guys kind of lined up. That has to be one. And then the third is the mass deportations.
Okay, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. A great conversation last night with Alex Clark. Today, Stephen K. Bannon joins us. What an episode this is going to be. I ask him everything. If you have not, Steve Bannon is on fire, and he has the ear of President Trump. So if you want to know where the ball is bouncing to, Stephen K. Bannon is coming up. You're not going to want to miss this. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. You hope you had some time to spend with family. Today is Black Friday, so probably the only time in the Biden administration when you can catch a break on something. So you got those deals out there. I know I was up early. Got a few things. Can't tell you what because, the family was watching. You don't want them to know what I got for them. But anyway, we got a lot to get through with Steve Bannon today on where we are with the transition. I want to give you some updates on the media too, some really fascinating things that I want you to listen to. Before we do that, you guys know I've always told you that I have trouble sleeping, getting to sleep, falling asleep. One of the things that has been a total change for me is Beam's Dream Powder. Now, this is the one that I take most. It's the cinnamon cocoa flavor. They've got a brownie flavor that is unbelievably delicious as well. And then they just came out with this one. This is the white chocolate peppermint. Oh, the holiday season is already kicking in. This is no better time for the white chocolate peppermint. It's like dessert in your mouth, except for it's got reishi, apigenin, magnesium, melatonin, everything natural in a great tasting drink to make you fall asleep. Now, every night I try to take a scoop of it. I put it in water, swirl it around, put it in the microwave for 30 seconds, take it out. And 30 minutes later, when my head hits the pillow, I'm out like a light. And then when I wake up, fully refreshed. This is the kind of thing that athletes and professionals all over the world depend on every night to get a good night's sleep. So if it's you, a friend, someone that you know, this is the holiday season. This is the time when you can be a good friend to them and give them Beam's Dream Powder. Now, here's the cool part. Because you're a viewer of the show, any one of those flavors, maybe even multiple of them, try them all. I do. I mix it up, by the way. I usually go to the cocoa cinnamon, but once in a while, I'll throw the brownie one in. I'm excited to try the peppermint one too, because I do love a good peppermint, especially late at night, right after a meal. But you better be ready to go to bed because you're going to fall asleep and stay asleep. So go to shopbeam.com/Spicer and use code word Spicer for 40% off. 40% off. Here's your Black Friday sale. Right? You didn't have this one until today, right? Shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer, 40% off. Get as much as you can. This is going to be the best gift that you give out. All right. I want to just show you guys a media meltdown before we get to this conversation with Steve Bannon, because he'll appreciate this media meltdown. Jim Vandehei is the founder of Axios. He used to work and he helped found Politico. Before that, he was at the Washington Post. Before that, at a Capitol Hill newspaper called Roll Call. They gave out their own awards the other night with Al Jazeera. Yeah, that Al Jazeera. And he gave a profanity-laced diatribe, melting down about a tweet that Elon Musk sent out. Take a listen. Now, let me just give you the context. Elon Musk said, because I want you to see if you can tell the difference here. Elon Musk said, "We are the media." Okay? That's it. Listen to how Vandehei reacts at this self-indulgent award ceremony they gave to themselves at the National Press Club. Take a listen.
Elon Musk sits on Twitter every day, or X today, saying like, "We are the media. You are the media." My message to Elon Musk is, bullshit. You're not the media. You having a blue check mark, a Twitter handle, and 300 words of cleverness doesn't make you a reporter.
All right. I want to just explain to you the sleight of hand. Now, I said to you when this thing started that the Elon Musk said, "We are the media," right? We are the media. Okay. What did Vandehei say in that clip, though? You're not reporters. Do you see the sleight of hand? Elon never said we're reporters. He said we're the media. Now, I think I'm part of the media. I'm not a reporter. I'm not a journalist. I never want to be. I never claim to be. In fact, please don't ever call me that. Van der Heij's not saying, you guys don't report or whatever. First of all, I'm embarrassed. If I was a reporter, I'd be embarrassed. You guys got it wrong. You get everything wrong. You suppress information. You feed misinformation. What are you getting right? Why would you want to be a reporter? But regardless, just stop for a second and realize this. Who is, like, Elon Musk created a platform where we don't need to go through them. We don't need the media to tell us what we believe anymore. We have these independent outlets. Look at how well the Trump campaign utilized them. Joe Rogan, the Nelk Boys, etc. Right? JD Vance came on this show. We had Donald Trump do an interview about the Front Row Joes. They don't need them anymore. The American people, and now James Carville's melting down saying the Democrats need to have a better understanding of the media landscape. As if, like, open your eyes, dude. It's right there. You had a bad candidate who didn't know how to take advantage of them and couldn't talk to them. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist. But Van der Heij's freaking out because this is their money. Go look at the advertisers of a Politico or an Axios. You know what you'll see? Pharma companies, big food. The more we expose this and that their ratings go down, the more screwed they are. And it's not just Axios. Look at the Washington Post. They lost $70 million last year. If Jeff Bezos wasn't personally financing them, they'd be gone. Democracy dies in plain sight, folks. You guys suck at what you do. No one's buying it. You look at the ratings. Look at this. The cable ratings ending last week. I mean, Fox News got 2.8 million viewers, average viewers share total. MSNBC was a third of that, 925, and CNN is down to 517,000 average viewers. In the prize, they call it the demo, right, which is 35 to 54, I think, right in there. Look at this. Fox News got 353 average viewers in the demo. MSNBC, 79,000 viewers in the demo. And CNN, 96,000. Like, no one's watching. But no wonder they're being sold or being told they got to make massive cuts. No one likes this stuff. This is the problem. And they're all melting down about it. So, anyway, I want to tell you before I bring in Steve Bannon about what some of you may still be dealing with. I know a lot of us got stuffed yesterday, full. And I get it, right? It was a big meal. But beyond just yesterday, I think 70 to 80% of Americans have an unhealthy gut. And your immune system, your health, your sleep, your skin, so much is affected by having a healthy gut. It's just a fact. And so the folks at Just Thrive, you might remember Tina Anderson. She's come on a few times to talk about wellness and Maha and all this stuff. She has got some amazing products over at Just Thrive. They've got a Just Calm, which I think is fantastic. I use both of these, the Just Calm and their probiotic. And here's the cool thing about them. They're all natural. They've got 1,000 times more market research than anything else out there right now. And when it comes to the probiotic, it's something that so many of us said, hey, we want to be healthier. We want to find a way to do stuff for our gut because of how important it is. We learn more. The problem is 99% of probiotics on the market don't get through your stomach to the intestine. So it's like a waste. You're literally just taking a pill that goes nowhere. Not the stuff of Just Thrive. They've got 1,000 times more survivability than anything else on the market. More clinical research. It's amazing. And it has an effect on all these other things. As I said, your sleep, your skin, your immune system. So check out the episode with Tina Anderson. It's amazing. And for a limited time, you can try any of the products that are the Just Thrive probiotic, the Just Calm. I've told you before, I love the probiotic gummies. And Tina assures me, not only are they part of this deal, but that they're just as good for you because I love it. They taste fantastic. It's like, a twofer. I get to be healthy and almost like a piece of candy. So go to justthrivehealth.com, justthrivehealth.com. Use promo code SPICER for up to 20% off any of the stuff. And that includes the gummies, by the way. I checked it out. Order as many as you can. Again, another great Christmas gift this year. Go to justthrivehealth.com, promo code SPICER. All right, I want to bring in Stephen K. Bannon, the host of The War Room. Hey, Steve, welcome back to the show. Always good to see you.
Hey, Sean, how you doing, man? Haven't been on since we did the Front Row Joes, which is a film I absolutely love.
I'm telling you. And when President Trump, by the way, said in Michigan, right on election night eve, "This is my last rally," I thought to myself, well, folks, if you missed a Trump rally, this is the only way you can see one now is to go to frontrowjoes.movie. So I told him the other day, I said, it's been great. And as a side note, just so you know, and you and I texted on this, Amazon is declining to let us air this. The first time I've told anybody but you this, because they're saying that it doesn't meet their content standard. And by the way, here's the best part. There is no appealing the decision. And so we can't find out why. It's just, so it's just, and it's funny. I told people when we put it up on Salem, the guys at Salem said, Sean, we're going to want to make DVDs available. I said, does anyone want DVDs? And they said, trust me.
Sean, here's my recommendation on air. I would call the political director of Jeff Bezos, his political operation, and say, hey, I want to talk to Bezos directly. I think his attitude today would be a little different than when
Yeah. Hey, suddenly,
it may be profiled, special, yeah. Amazon special.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's like, one of those Facebook things where, like, I don't know how the algorithm caught that. That was a mistake. Yeah. So, yeah, I think might want to reach out to Amazon. I'll let them know. All right, so let me just, overall, let's start with this. What do you think about the picks that President Trump has made so far?
I think it shows that he's going to have a combination of both steady eddies and some disruptive. I think you got to look at, to me, directionally, where you have the areas he really wants to focus on, things that need some restructuring are things like the intelligence community with Tulsi Gabbard. Obviously, DOJ, the Deputy Attorney General actually runs the building. And folks, just so you should know, I think Sean would agree that the most complicated job in all of D.C., with many complicated jobs, is the Attorney General. Everything, whether it's Defense Department, State Department, DHS, the Treasury, everything goes across the Attorney General's desk. Everything. And
so let me paint this picture, though. We can talk about the other picks in a second, right? And so far, I don't see an argument against the other picks. I know people are shocked and surprised.
The timing of Wednesday, the other day, was, Thune stepped up and said, okay, I'm open. We're going to do the Trump agenda. And, my job is to, and he and Cornyn swore, we may not need the recess. We're not going to do recess because we will stay here every day until they get approved. Okay, bro, suck on this.
Here's the thing. Someone said to me, multiple people said, Pete Hegseth, is he really qualified? I go, well, so he deployed 3 times. He ran a VSO, a veteran service organization called Concerned Veterans for America. He was an officer, what part of, and he's written multiple books on the military. He went to Harvard. So I'm sorry, which qualification?
Went to Princeton.
Princeton. I'm sorry.
I think he has an advanced degree from Harvard, but we call him a Princeton guy.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't know. But I guess the thing that's so funny is I said, so explain to me what the qualification you're looking for, because he served, he deployed, he fought, he led an organization. Yeah. He's highly intelligent, clearly, in terms of where he went to school, right? And they were like, well, I go, so what you're saying is, let's just be clear. He didn't come from like the establishment, right? He didn't come from Boeing or General Dynamics, or he wasn't a retired four-star.
Look, here's, I think, you've been in the building. Here's what I think the question is. And we will put people around him like that. He'll be leadership. It is the most complicated industrial concern in the world. The complexity of the issues, the weapons procurement, the material command. I was a special assistant to the Chief of Naval Operations back in 81 to 83. And my job was to sit in those decision meetings and be the scribe and kind of vet the presentations. It was so mind-numbingly complex. It's just insane. And it's metastasized since then. I think the hit on Pete is going to be, well, first of all, the swamp doesn't want him because he is a breath of fresh air. And he's like, right. I love putting up junior officers into those positions above the flags, particularly when they have leadership. You have to put a team around him, his deputy, other people like that, because it's the biggest. And the budget's $1 trillion. And as you know, Sean, how complex, and particularly at the high level where you got to organize and make sure, we fight as one unit, all the weapons procurement. And Pete's been very big spokesman on this, how he doesn't think that China's well ahead of us in technology. So this is where I see actually Elon Musk and people like Vivek I know they're going to redo the government. I see them being a big help to Pete Hegseth. And I think the team the president puts around him is going to be critical. And I think it'll be critical for his confirmation. I think he will get confirmed, subject to his financial and personal stuff all being sorted out. But I think he'll get confirmed. But I think you have to give some cover to people to say, hey, we're going to put guys in, because he's never run a big organization. I honestly believe that what happened on Wednesday, as you know, we fought the Thune thing. I think the Thune situation cruised through, and that Scott, who I don't think really had a shot, was out, because I thought the Hegseth nomination, I think, got a lot of those guys over there saying, hey, I gotta have some air cover here.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's interesting, you mentioned China. I'm like, here's the problem, and I've been trying to explain this to people. When the priority in the building, as we say, in the DoD, is like, let's make sure we have DEI training, as opposed to warfighter readiness. Let's make sure we can take on the enemy and defeat them and protect the country. That's the priority, not whether or not, we've done training about equity and inclusion.
Hang on. We've had two problems. That's one, as it got woke. But there's a more fundamental systemic problem. Remember, Obama in 2009, his big thing was pivot to Asia. We come, and his whole pivot to Asia was forward deploying one Marine Combat Brigade to Darwin, Australia. He couldn't do it because the CENTCOM mentality, I mean, I don't need to tell you this, but the CENTCOM mentality of the building is locked in. Now, even with Trump and even with Biden, our ability to really, which I think we have to do, is to pivot in a multinational, multi-service way, not just the Navy, but to East Asia, and to Taiwan, and to the South China Sea, and to the East China Sea, Indo-Pacific, has been brutal. Let's be honest, we haven't done it because the building's been very reticent to do it. CENTCOM still has a center of gravity in the Pentagon that has been and they're going to look at Pete, and a lot of those guys are going to lick their chops. They're going to go, hey, I got a brave junior officer. He fought in the Middle East. He's attuned to what's happening, and I think Pete will surprise them. But if you want a real pivot to Asia and to take the Chinese Communist Party on and let them know militarily that we can actually defend Taiwan, it's going to be a lift, and you're going to need the entire team. Waltz, and here's what I like about Waltz Rubio. People blowing up their neocons. I said, yeah, they have those tendencies, but in the House and in the Senate, we have the two hardest anti-CCP guys. I mean, Rubio's report he put out on the CCP's 100 top guys and the assets they own is a breathtakingly, brilliant study of putting the CCP on notice. So I think Waltz and Rubio will be there. I think Pete will be there. And I think the big thing you're going to see as we try to get peace in Ukraine, peace in the Middle East, is a true pivot to Asia to actually be able to show the Chinese Communist Party that we are prepared militarily to take on all comers, and not just with the Seventh Fleet.
All right, folks, hate to interrupt this conversation with Steve, but it's Black Friday. I know a lot of you have been out shopping today, and I know a lot of you probably started the day with a cup of coffee. Well, I'm going to combine the two. How do you like the fact that right now, tomorrow, you could start your day with an amazing cup of coffee from the folks at Wired to Fish? That's right. This is amazing coffee, Arabica beans sourced from Guatemala and Mexico, box checked, great coffee. But here's the kicker. Today, when you're out shopping, you probably think to yourself, when I buy these things, am I supporting a company that doesn't support the values I believe in? Not so with the folks at Wired to Fish, because 25% of their profits go to faith-based initiatives and clean water initiatives. So you are getting a great cup of coffee and supporting causes and values that are consistent with things that you believe in. To me, this is the ultimate win-win. Great cup of coffee, great values, great causes that they support. And so if you want to do something good for yourself today, on Black Friday, I got a deal for you. Head over to wired2fishcoffee.com, wired the numeral 2, fishcoffee.com. Use code WeCare and you get 15% off. Boom, Black Friday, here you go. Get yourself something that you will be proud to drink and support. A win-win here. Wired the numeral 2, fishcoffee.com. Use code WeCare. That's just one word. WeCare, no space, 15% off. All right, back to our conversation with Stephen K. Bannon. So the funny thing is, I'm not saying anything classified or sharing any secrets when I say this, but you remember there were plenty of times President Trump would come in and say, hey, I want to get us out of Afghanistan. I want things changed up. And they would come in and say, okay, course of action 1, is we do everything the same. Course of action 2 is we add more people. And he would start to blow up and say, what part of change don't you get? And I think with Pete Hegseth, he's got someone that right off the bat is going to go, I got it. And we're going to come back with a solution, as opposed to we're going to dress up the same old thing with just a better PowerPoint slide.
For your audience, understand we have a government that's $6.5 trillion a year, but the contingent liabilities, 37 trillion in debt, contingent liabilities over 100, vast assets, but spending 6-7 trillion a year, massive deficits. But in that, you have about 2.5 million civilians, roughly 2.5 million service employees, so about 5 together. You have 18 million contractors. 9 million of those are just cleaning the bill and things like that. So you have 9 million kind of working contractors. Half of those are executives. So let's say another 4 or 5 million. So 10 million, which makes sense, to run an apparatus that's $7 trillion a year. To do that, you get 4,000 people. 3,000, Sean, as you remember, we can send in a landing team, beachhead team. They can go in. As long as they get a security clearance, they can hit the deck place running. 1,000, the top guys, secretaries, cabinet guys, undersecretaries, have to be Senate confirmed. Now, in the White House, Sean Spicer and Steve Bannon don't need any confirmation. They're part of that 3,000 that just hit the deck plates running. So this is why President Trump, I think, has to get the team together, very organized, to make sure that we can kind of hit this thing running, and it's as much organized as possible. At the same time, put the Senate Republicans on notice. Hey, you're essentially the Human Resources Department. I need these guys right here set up and teed up to go. I think President Trump is putting you on notice of what he intends to do as he confronts the debt ceiling and the massive deficits and the tax, everything economically, the border, the deportation. I mean, Stephen Miller and these guys right now, there won't be any stories about Miller being a Nazi for a while. Let me go back to what I said about Attorney General. Here's the reason. Everything in this city is basically about lawyers. It just is. The Constitution is simply a contract. The Constitution is a contract between 13 unequal entities to merge into a merger of equals to kind of form a nation. Everything from there is contractual relationship. The AG, the Attorney General, is the most complicated job, and particularly President Trump, in trying to deconstruct the administrative state, particularly try to take on the deep state. Your obviously intel people are important. Your people at DOD are important. The White House counsel and those people are important. But the people who are going to lead that are really the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, the DAG. You have to have a team. And I agree with you. I think that this is where a couple of those senators, first off, you're going to lose Murkowski and Collins. So you're at 51. You got to hold the line. And I think this is where Trump says, hey, look, I could have easily fought you. I could have gotten all these guys up, the Sean Spicer and the Bannon. I could have worked them all up. Their audiences would have been I didn't do that, right? You said you were going to back my choices. This is my choice. Give me some advice and then give me your consent.
Give me your consent. So who is there someone I think to me, the border security team, particularly Tom Homan, I think that was the best signal to me for people who are concerned about immigration and our nation's security. When Tom Homan got that announcement, I said, hey, guess what? I think it sent chills through the cartels. They went, oh, crap, we might need to get into another line of work.
And also with Stephen Miller at the same time. As you know, Stephen, he has a house style that is a little blunt. To make him the first announced deputy chief of staff for policy and announce he's going to be the connective tissue with Homan. I think what President Trump also did in announcements, you did all the comm strategy for us besides being the spokesman. People don't realize, Sean, I'm sure your audience doesn't. Sean did something that's very unique. I don't really remember anybody else doing it. He was the comms director, which is one of the most complicated jobs in the White House. All communications comes through one guy. And I mean, everything from it's National Pancake Day to we're going to war, right? It's definitely.
God, I love Pancake Day.
And everything in between. But then you're also the press secretary. And the press secretary, every day I'd walk in, Sean being this binder, I'd walk in, there'd be 30 guys. They murder board this guy because you have to. It's so complicated. So I think that is why the announcement of what they did here, I think, was quite strategic. They held off the head of DHS. And in fact, it was kind of confusing at first. Was Homan DHS, borders are whatever. But when they named him and Miller at the same time, you kind of understood, okay, they're hardwiring the White House to these agencies. And then to name Governor Nome the next day as DHS, kind of shows you she'll probably do more of the terrorism and the Secret Service and that. This is your team. I also think this is why it was important to announce Bill McGinley, announce the White House counsel. I think what you're seeing is that they're kind of doing verticals. You announce a Walls, right? And then you got Hegseth a couple of days later, right? So you announce these verticals. What's going to happen, either National Security Council to the Pentagon, National Security Council to the Secretary of State, White House counsel to DOJ, and I'm sure NEC and the Domestic Policy Council will be around who Treasury Secretary is, et cetera. So I think it's a very smart information and communication strategy.
Okay. You last time in 2016 were instrumental in key positions. I mean, I think the SECDEF, Secretary of the Navy rather, and Joint Chiefs, other key functions. Who do you really want to fight for right now? What positions are you trying to get to Trump and say, these are the ones that I think are critical to a successful second term?
The ones I fought for to date have been, my belief from the beginning is that the two or three most important that must be done properly is the Attorney General with the White House counsel and the people around him. That DOJ is absolutely important. Let's throw FBI in there. What I would call that.
So will he fire Wray?
100% day one. I mean, they're down to the FBI situation is absolutely critical. So that's important, right? You've got to keep that. I think the other is what I call the economic, because the firestorm that's going to come with the debt ceiling and the budget and all that. You have to have Treasury, you have to have NEC, and all the Treasury kind of guys kind of lined up. That has to be one. And then the third is the mass deportations. That's Homan and Stephen Miller. If you can take care of those three, like Rubio, people say, well, why are you blowing Rubio up? You're America first, and he's a neocon. I said, well, besides the fact he's anti-CCP, to me, that's just not in my bailiwick. Those three power agencies right now, you have to do that correct. If you don't do that correct, President Trump's second term is going to get a little bumpy. So, I know DOD is important and all that. It'll kind of fall into place. But you got to get those three correct.
So did you give him a name? Have you given him a name, or do you want somebody in particular for FBI?
I've given him a name and worked quite hard for the FBI.
Okay. You mentioned the CCP. I believe.
I think, by the way, I think the FBI ought to be taken apart, shut down as a federal agency, go to Congress and undo it, and rebuild a federal law enforcement force if you need it somehow around the U.S. Attorney. First thing I do with the FBI is go over there with the 250 lawyers they have, clean them all out, send them over to DOJ, and then maybe use them after you fire all the U.S. attorneys. What I've recommended, you should fire ask for the letters of resignation of all the U.S. attorneys at 1 minute afternoon on the 20th of January 2025. Ask for those. Take the lawyers from the FBI, put them in justice, and then either keep them or get rid of them. But the FBI, I think, ought to be taken apart.
I want to remind you of something very interesting, and because people missed this when it happened. When Biden came into office in August of that first year, he fired me and everyone else who served on the Service Academy boards. I was on the board of visitors for the U.S. Naval Academy, and he fired everyone. And I sued all these other. It's funny how many other people President Trump supported and nominated who wouldn't join the lawsuit. It was Spicer v. Biden, because a bunch of these people who are so committed to President Trump, they didn't want their name on a lawsuit. So anyway, we sued President Biden. And here is the dirty secret, Steve. My term ended in November. So I was about 2 months out and I knew I wasn't going to be renominated by Biden, but he fired us. And so by the time we went to court, my term was over. And he fought us in court and said that they had absolute authority, regardless of what the law said and what Congress had written, to fire anybody, anytime. Now, here's why this matters. For anybody worth their salt, they realized my term had expired by the time we went to court and by the time we appealed it. The goal was never to actually get all of me and these other folks back on the boards. It was to make them affirmatively argue in a court that they had the authority to do this. Now, guess what? President Trump can use the Biden arguments that were successful in court to say, you guys laid out the precedent.
You ought to get to say this on air. You better get to, I'll connect you to Bill McGinley. You got to get to McGinley, right?
I know, but isn't this beautiful? We knew what we were doing, and nobody in the media, they kept saying, you lost the case. And I went, you dummies have no idea what we're doing, because we just played you all. We made you go to court and fight to say we had the authority. And I think that they forgot. So when President Trump comes in right now, all he has to do is say, Joe Biden gave us the precedent. And the courts have affirmed that he has everything he needs to do. And I was laughing all the way to his second term, because I was going, you guys just screwed up so royally. Well, you got me off a board for 60 days.
Because they never thought Trump would be back. And they understood that a standard stock Republican would never do that. They would never, oh gosh.
Yeah. And by the way, just as I mentioned, we might want to remember who those people were that refused to put their name on the lawsuit, because they were so worried about etiquette and norms. I said, screw it, let's fight for principle. And guess what? And now we win.
I was so proud when you did that, and quite frankly, a little disappointed in people that President Trump, because remember, even every nomination he did, everything he did was a struggle everywhere. So it was a struggle because the apparatus, the established order just fought him on everything. So look, good on you.
I'll follow up with McKinley. So let me ask you this. When we were getting ready in 2016, you and I whiteboarded some.
By the way, you see, Sean threw out a leading thing just for the audience. This is how smart Sean is in communications. He threw out a thing. But Steve, I know you focused on SECDEF. You did such a great job, Secretary of the Navy. Do you want to be Secretary of the Navy, Sean? Should I start working that one? I think you'd be a great secretary.
Anyway, so let's get on.
No, I think you'd be a great secretary. No, I know Reince has already pitched me, because Reince is like an ensign or something now, right? So Commander.
Yeah, I think at some point you need to know how many ships we have before you become second.
Commander, I'm going to say this on air. I absolutely 1,000% support you being Secretary of the Navy, and I will get working on that right now. And I've got a pretty good track record. So
my wife is going to appreciate that. I thank you for that. Anyway, let me just, you and I whiteboarded a bunch of reforms. I don't want to get into the names for Press Secretary Comms. I'll leave that aside. He announced Taylor Budowich as the Deputy Chief for Communications. But let's just talk reforms for a second. In all seriousness, the press corps right now, I published an op-ed in The Hill that came out on Wednesday. And I said, hey, screw the New York Times, screw the front row. President Trump and the campaign effectively used independent media, right? Your show, this show, long form, Joe Rogan, you name it, right? They need to rethink how they approach the media at all, like totally, because you don't need CNN and the New York Times.
First of all, we're setting the agenda now. So first, conservatives, I want to stop the whining about the mainstream media anymore. We are the dominant media force. The podcast, the streaming services, the radio shows, the clips, everything, put it up on Twitter, whatever your platform is. So you can tell in this last campaign how we can drive that. What I think the White House ought to do. And so, as you remember, my plan in 16, early 17, was to take the White House press corps, which is right on top of the Oval Office.
I know.
And I wanted to remove it across Lafayette Square and make them come on every day. But Reince being the nice guy, so Reince is a very kind man, he says, let's put him in the EOB. You got to remember, if you ever go back on YouTube and watch these amazing press conferences at Jack Kennedy, the first two were done at the State Department, but the others were done, I think, over in the auditorium of EOB, which is magnificent. I would put the press conference over there in a bigger theater. I think it seats 250, which Trump, he loves playing to big houses, right? So you put big rooms. So you put that there. And by the way, I think you put all the media over there. You get them out of being right on top of people because they can come up from where the pool used to be, where the Brady and that thing. And for folks on TV, it is 10 times bigger than in real life. It is so tiny down there, right? You're on top of each other. Then I would do something else, like your editorial say. The first three rows should be the podcast and the streaming services. And we got to find the new Helen Thomas. Is it Joe Rogan show or whatever? That the first questions go to the people that drive the news, right? The people that young people are forgetting the news by, right? TikTok people, Instagram people, all of it. And as long as they send people that are serious there as White House correspondents, and that all has to be kind of vetted, I'm all for changing it radically. And here's what I think you're going to find. You're going to find such a massive interest by young people of all this news, right? You're going to see it presented in a different way. President Trump's a disruptor, And I think that this is the perfect time to do this.
All right. We talked about personnel. I didn't take college in math, so I'm going to just be straight with you on this. But they have currently a 220 majority House Republicans, right? So he's got Wolf, Stefanik, and Gaetz so far.
220. Well, I think it's going to get to 221, 222.
Okay, so 221, 222.
Gaetz, Stefanik, and Waltz all gone right now.
Okay, so right now, Speaker Johnson, I mean, one person goes in for an operation. There's the majority. How concerned should we be about this?
First off, you got to get. I think Hochul won't do it, but I think that DeSantis can name special elections right away. Those are two safe districts. We ought to get up and go in and get those guys in there. Like the special election should be the 21st of January. It should be the day after the inauguration, because you're right. You get a guy. Hey, three of these guys are a little, creaky. They could, they could miss a day or two with illness. So I think that's a big concern.
Okay.
This is why I think, like even Elise, who I think is fantastic. I'm glad she's going to the UN. I would have probably held off on that one till we got a little into it and maybe named her even later. But hey, it's very thin. It's all
right. President Trump's talked about retribution. He's talked about, and I'm just saying, like the media is all.
You mean justice?
Okay, yeah, fine. But okay, he's talked about bringing, there's been rumors, I should say that, because let's be honest about where the media is, about bringing people like Mark Milley back on active duty, sending him to a court martial, whatever.
Number one thing is, I think Mark Milley's got to be recalled on the first action of President Trump. I think is so important to reassert civilian control over the Pentagon, the uniformed services. I think Mark Milley has to be recalled to active duty on the afternoon of the 20th. And I think a military tribunal, a court martial, has to be called, right, impaneled, a court martial, and Mark Milley has to be brought up on charges in court martial.
Okay. What about in general, like his tone? Meaning, I think President Trump struck an amazing tone with President Biden when he says, my retribution is your success. What pisses the left off is when he is right.
Yes.
And I think what silenced so much of the left is when they saw on election night women, people of color, young kids saying, you know what, this guy gets it done.
Yes. That's all. Look, he's got to focus on the economic and the border. That's what got him here. The economic crisis we have before us because of the debt levels is going to be serious. That should be with the Secretary of Treasury and the economic team, all important. He should focus on that along with the beginning of the mass deportations. That's going to be enormously complicated, as you can imagine. All the other stuff, I think, has to be done with absolute sunlight, 100% transparency. What I would recommend, and I think you've talked to him many times about this, I would start in the afternoon of the 20th with the beginning of a rolling series of the biggest declassifications we've ever had. As you know, Sean, too much stuff is classified, and that's just to kind of keep the powers that be in the powers that be. I think you start with mass, you start with mass declassifications, day after day after day, on all types of topics. And then I think you get in, you let the attorney general, you let the inspector generals, the IGs, the people running intelligence, let those deal with that, where President Trump should be up every day talking to the people about economics, about his new tax cuts, about his growth policies, about all that, and how humanely we're going to actually reverse the 11 million people that came in under Biden's watch. That's a full-time job. And I think he's upbeat, a new golden age. Mark Andreessen, these guys are talking about Bill Ackman saying you could have 4 or 5% growth just on technology once you take off the restraining regulations. I think we ought to be doing that. President Trump ought to be doing that. And now you've got Gaetz, you've got other people that can carry the ball for you on what has to be total open sunlight investigations.
All right, let me just ask you this. You spent 4 months in prison because a sham committee decided that they had the authority to do something that I think was ridiculous. We now know that Liz Cheney coerced testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson and subverted her own attorney, Stefan Passatino, and then literally lied about him, tarred and feathered that guy. How do you, I look at this and say, how does that, just on a personal level, you look, and do you want retribution? Do you want to, expose these guys?
What I think has to happen is we have to redo a new January 6th committee where they have a ranking member and they have minority counsel. They get all the information, they cross-examine. We have to do it like we've done Watergate and all these other things. You can't do it. You have to have full transparency. We have to go back, and I think the House can do this, to 2020 and to January 6th, all of it, and have to go through fundamentally and make sure the Democrats have a voice in this. Make sure that they can cross-examine.
Okay, but fine. But how do you personally? I'd be pissed. I'm petty and Irish.
I fought this over separation of powers. Look, I knew Nancy Pelosi are lawless. It is what it is. The prison time I had, because the prison, I wasn't in a camp like Michael Cohen or Peter Navarro. I was actually in a federal prison. It was the most empowering thing I've ever done. And the reason was I spent my 20s on a Navy destroyer where you're kind of on top of each other, cheek by jowl. And I spent my 70s in a federal prison where the same thing. It was very empowering for me to know that I could physically go through something that's trying to break you. And I went through, and I actually, I enjoyed the challenge. I actually loved it. The challenge is so extreme because the place is so violent. There's so many drugs, and it's such a controlled environment that for me, and I knew I don't have any vengeance for Nancy Pelosi. What we have to make sure is that this can never happen again. I was the first misdemeanor in Danbury's history. It's been there since 1935. I think I was told I'm the only misdemeanor been in a federal prison, I think, in history. I think they've only they have misdemeanors, even then they go to camps. It's just you don't put people in misdemeanors in prison. So it just we have to make sure that we can't allow the weaponization of government. And that's going to take a while. So I think, and the people rendered a verdict on principally what they thought was happening to Trump, but as a subset to Navarro, myself, as part of that. But I was proud, and I said, if I have to go to prison again for fighting for this, I'll go to prison again. I'm not going to back off, and they can't intimidate me with prison. So people have to realize in our fight, particularly if we lose control again, like we did lose control of the houses of Congress and the executive branch, you should understand that if you're at the tip of the spear of this fight, they're going to target you unless we stop it now. And the way to stop it now is full investigations of the folks that did it.
You're a better man than me. I would be bitter, petty, and seek revenge. But there you go. All
right,
Steve.
The crazy Irishman that loves the fight.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for this.
Commander, I'm leaving your show with the following. I'm going to now work on, over the weekend, Sean Spicer as Secretary of the Navy Secretary. I think, and that's serious, I think he'd be great. You have a great love. You have a great love for the Navy. And right now we need somebody in leadership over there that has a great love for our fleet and our sailors.
Well, I will say this with Waltz and Hegseth, we've already got too much Army, and this is, so. So, all right, Steve, I appreciate you spending time with us.
See you, brother.
Thanks, brother. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that just shows you what we're talking about. When I say buckle up, baby, that's what I'm talking about. He's got an agenda. He's got President Trump's ear, and he's telling them, here's what's going on. Here's what we need to do day one. Here's how we need to show people that the Trump agenda is in effect. Here's how we hold people accountable. Unbelievable. All right. Next week, we go back to the morning meeting, 9 a.m. every morning, Eastern Standard Time on my YouTube feed. If you haven't seen the morning meeting, check it out. Share it with folks. It is the most insightful thing, and I don't mean to brag, but it is. And then 6 o'clock, we've got some amazing guests coming up. Tom Homan's coming up. Megyn Kelly's coming up. We're bringing you key members of the transition as well, all month long. Until January 20th, you're going to see these key folks on this show. We called the election right. We called J.D. Vance right, and we've got more insight on the transition than anybody else. Tune in here every night at 6 o'clock. Thanks for being with us. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.